All right, everyone, welcome back into the first NFL DFS video of the season. Going to be breaking down the Hall of Fame game here for you, giving you all the top picks and plays and information that you need to succeed on this slate. Let's go ahead and get into it. So first, just starting with a little bit of the game preview here. As we can see, it's a low-scoring game. Now, this is via DraftKings Sportsbook. All the other sportsbooks are going to be giving us around the same lines, 31.5 for the over and under. That could actually potentially be a little bit higher. A lot of the Hall of Fame games are sloppy, though. The play is just not good. It's still fun to watch, though, I would say. But typically speaking, there aren't that many wild plays in this game. One of the reasons why it's expected to be a low-scoring game is because the Chicago Bears have already come out and said that they are not going to be playing any of their starters. And so for me, the biggest question when it comes to that is, who are the starters? Now, we already know that Caleb Williams is going to be considered a starter for the Chicago Bears. But what I'm interested in is someone like Khalil Herbert considered a starter? Is he kind of a 1B situation in this, or is it just purely DeAndre Swift? And by that same consideration, is someone like Gerald Everett going to be kind of a 1B situation as well, who is someone that is considered a starter that might not play in this game? Now, tight end wise, we probably don't have to worry about them as a play on this slate. This is a showdown slate, and that just becomes a little bit too risky. And that is a big question mark on this slate, obviously. Let's go ahead and look at the Chicago Bears depth chart, specifically looking at the running back position, because this is certainly interesting. If DeAndre Swift and Khalil Herbert don't play, or if Herbert is playing maybe a series, gets the start and then is done, that's going to leave a lot of playing time available. And that is due purely to the fact that Travis Homer and Ian Wheeler are looking like they're not going to play in this game. And so that really leaves them limited in terms of who could play running back for the Chicago Bears. Now, I do want to call out that they did just sign Demetric Felton 2 days ago. He is someone that is a pretty good pass catcher, not a terrible back at all. Just how much is he going to play being someone that was just signed? They do have Kahari Blasingame as well, who has been used as a running back in the past, a little bit here and there, especially during the preseason. Capable fullback, capable runner as well. They could choose to just, all right, this is your game to go out and have fun. I doubt that. He is considered technically a starter as well. So will he be playing? I don't really expect that. And it's also worth pointing out that Velus Jones Jr. has been getting a little bit of work in the backfield as well for the Chicago Bears. And so when we get back into this depth chart, what is that going to mean for the playing time at the running back position? Are we just going to see a lot of Roschon Johnson? Is it going to be Felton? Or do we take a chance that Velus Jones Jr. actually is going to be a good play for us simply because he could get some work receiver-wise and could get some work running back-wise? That could end up being pretty huge. And then looking at the quarterback position as well, Caleb Williams is sitting. We do know that. And we also know that Tyson Bagent is going to be starting in this game. Now, how much is he going to play? That is going to be very difficult to figure out. I did go ahead and take a peek at the Chicago Bears data from last year's preseason. And in game one, they ran out all of their quarterbacks. Now, this is the Hall of Fame game. And obviously with the Hall of Fame game, both the Texans and the Bears are getting an additional game. At the same time, this is still 4 games. For when I started out doing preseason NFL DFS 7 years ago, which is crazy to think about, we had 4 preseason games. Actually, the Hall of Fame game was extremely difficult to predict because that's an extra 5th game. Basically, no starters played or backups played. And so we have seen that this has been a little bit treated like an initial preseason game where it's not only backups. Now, the Bears are giving us only backups, but the preseason trends that I use to create a massive edge over the years in preseason NFL DFS, tougher to dial in on for the Hall of Fame game. Now, that being said, just for what it's worth, game one, the Chicago Bears last year in the preseason did not pass the football that much. Only 22 passing attempts. They tried to run it a bunch, 29 passing attempts there. In that game, Roschon Johnson had 12 carries. So probably not expecting them to pass the football too much. In the second and third game, much more balanced attack, but they still spread out the production, especially in terms of the quarterback position with all their quarterbacks. So Brad Rippon is someone that could get a decent amount of work. Undrafted rookie free agent Austin Reed, probably going to get a decent amount of work. My expectation is that those 3 quarterbacks all do about a third of the work. And Austin Reed wasn't terrible. Actually, if we got word that Austin Reed was going to play a half, he'd probably be one of my favorite plays. Now, guys, I did kind of bury the lead here. We'll get into more of the Chicago Bears plays here in just a second, but just in general on the slate, the typical strategy really to do on the Hall of Fame game specifically, or any preseason NFL DFS slate that's a showdown slate, is to play the kickers and the defense. And obviously this is a game that's going to be a very low scoring game, so you're going to want to do that. And typically speaking, we do not see that many touchdowns, and so it can lead to a little bit more field goals. And so it really depends on how many lineups you're going to be putting out there, but you should just be mixing and matching, Texans in the captain spot, Cairo Santos in the captain spot, mixing those 4 players, I know it's DST, in that captain spot. It doesn't really matter. You're just trying to maximize your upside, and you can get away with playing all 4 of them in your builds, and you should be able to have a decent profit by doing that. And for what it's worth, getting back into the Bears, Santos is going to be the starter there. Yes, we know that, but they didn't bring in any other player to compete with him kicker-wise. And low-key, I'm a little bit excited, just while we're on the kickers, to actually see their rookie punter from Iowa. I think it's Troy Terry, 4th-round pick. I'm kind of excited to see him punt. That's part of the fun part of the Hall of Fame game. But in terms of who we could potentially be on for the Chicago Bears on offense, so I do think we probably want to be running out one of the running backs. To me, it is Roschon Johnson. He is the most logical play to get a decent amount of work in this game. He is someone that a lot of people were excited for, like season-long NFL DFS-wise. Really, at this point last year, as well as throughout the preseason, did have some big splash plays, but he kind of proved that he wasn't all that good. Didn't really live up to the hype. Khalil Herbert was clearly better than him. So he is someone that does need to step up if he wants to get playing time. So I do expect him to get a decent amount of playing time. Again, with that Chicago Bears backfield being pretty banged up. From there, it does feel like a guessing game for the running back position. Again, Felton could be someone we're looking at. But let's jump into the receivers. I mentioned Velus Jones Jr. He is someone that I do like a decent amount. During this video, I kind of talked myself into him a decent amount. Now, what is a decent amount? Maybe 20%, like not going too crazy with it. Maybe 10%, but I do want exposures to him in case he is someone that does get a decent amount of work. I tend to want to play more guaranteed plays in preseason NFL DFS, and if I get any sort of news that he is going to get designed reps at the running back position, I probably will be trying to target him. So from there, what else are we looking at? Well, I do want to call it that Webster was someone I was excited to play in preseason NFL DFS. He is a decent talent. He is most likely going to sit. And so that does leave the Bears just kind of being pretty banged up heading into this Hall of Fame game, especially if the starters are going to be sitting. That's kind of big. And my question as well, we know DJ Moore's the starter. Shout out to him. He just got a 4-year contract extension. We know Keenan Allen's going to be a starter. Reports are that Rome Odunze and Caleb Williams have a great connection going on right now. Is he going to play? That's my big question, because Tyler Scott is someone that has been getting a lot of love as well. Now, we look at the depth chart. They do have DJ Moore listed as a starter, obviously. Rome Odunze as a starter over Velus Jones Jr. So Tyler Scott is not currently listed as a starter, which does make sense. Now, I bring that up because he is someone that has been getting decent camp hype. He was someone that they try to get on the field a decent amount last year. He was an exciting rookie last year for them. For that Bears front office. They were excited for him, and they've been vocal about that still. So I do worry about how much he is going to play in this game. And so if he doesn't play that much, if the stars aren't playing that much, then we're looking at probably Dante Pettis, who we know is a talented player, especially against this caliber of opponent. He should be able to have a really good game. Can the quarterbacks get it to him? That's the question. But you also have DeAndre Carter there, who, again, decently talented, not terrible. Colin Johnson firmly in that group as well. And then I actually don't really love Freddie Swain. You know, I'd kind of knock him down a little bit. Like if I want to take a guess on, I'm one of those players, kind of the backups, second string players, Pettis and Johnson would be those options. I already have Velus Jones Jr. in there as potential plays I want to be on for the Chicago Bears. But I do want to call out, I'm a sicko, guys. I watched a bunch of random film. I was watching some film on Peter LeBlanc. I think that's how you say his name. Anyways, decent player. I wouldn't be surprised if he makes a few splash plays in the fourth quarter. But specifically the fourth quarter. I don't expect him to get on the field all that much. Barely had any college production. I believe he went to Iowa State. Just kind of a smooth player. And then John Jackson wasn't all too impressive. Okay, let's go ahead and jump on into the Houston Texans. All right, so getting into the Houston Texans here now. We do have some news, but not enough. Okay, their head coach did not come out and specifically say that the starters weren't going to play. We know to expect that they're not going to play that much, though, which could end up being pretty huge. So let's just assume that CJ Stroud is not going to play that much, maybe a series. We could see that. That's what they did last year in their opening preseason game. That could happen again, but we still have 4 quarterbacks on their depth chart, so that's kind of muddy the situation. Now, before we get too crazy, let's take a peek at the injury report. And so we'll see we have a couple of injuries at the running back position specifically, nothing at the quarterback position, so we shouldn't have to worry about that. But Cam Akers and Joe Mixon are 2 players that are currently listed as questionable. If any player is listed as questionable, I just don't expect them to play in this game at all. mostly in the preseason. Like if they're injured heading into that game, they're probably just not going to play unless they're a backup that needs to play. Sometimes they do, but Mixon, Akers, not expecting them to play. And so we look at the depth chart. It's certainly an interesting depth chart from the running back position. So Joe Mixon, not expecting him to play that much. Cam Akers, not expecting him to play. I should say Mixon, we're not expecting him to play. Cam Akers, we're not expected to play. Dameon Pierce is a third year running back now for them. Doesn't make sense for him to play all that much. Now, he could still get a decent amount of work, but the Houston Texans last year did not give their running backs all that much work. They really spread out the production. Each running back had about 5 to 6 carries per game. There's one game where one of the running backs got 10 carries. That was the most. Now, there are apparently some reports out there suggesting that Dameon Pierce and also Jahar Jordan is going to get a decent amount of work. Both of those two are going to get a decent amount of work. To me, again, it doesn't make too much sense for Pierce to get that much work. They kind of know what they have in him. I wouldn't be surprised to see Jordan get a decent amount of work. He is someone that was low-key impressive as a draft prospect coming into the NFL draft. He kind of does everything right. And so I'm excited to see him play in this game. He is someone that they have been talking up a decent amount in camp as well. Logically speaking, it makes a lot of sense to give him work in this game, especially when you look at the other running backs on this roster. You got Dare Ogunbowale, who is a good season bet. He's more of a special teams player at this point. It doesn't really make sense to get him that much work in this game. JJ Taylor is basically the same thing as Dare Ogunbowale, just a smaller back, but much more of a pass catching back. He can make some big plays. If he gets playing time, I would love to be on him. I just don't expect that to happen. And British Brown just is not a good running back, more of a power back. Anyone can fall into the end zone, but I'm just not expecting that from him. So when we dial it down, we know Mixon, Akers not going to play. To me, just a logical play here, and probably my favorite play, is Jordan. Now, do we want to play him in the captain spot? Probably not. Again, we probably want to play defense and kicker there, but maybe he's someone that holds a big play. I could see that happening. He is probably my favorite play on the slate position player-wise. And then from there, getting back into the quarterback position, I do want to mention this, though. Last year, in 2 of their games, we saw all 4 quarterbacks play. We saw 3 quarterbacks play. And then in their third game, it was only 2 backups, but there wasn't that much production for them. And looking at the QB room, I mean, not all that great. Case Keenum can certainly be productive. Davis Mills, okay. But really, my biggest takeaway from that quarterback room in comparison to, let's say, the Chicago Bears quarterback room is I have a decent amount of confidence that the Houston Texans quarterbacks will be able to actually get the ball into their pass catchers. Okay, like I'm not too worried about that in that regard. So from there, let's go ahead and jump into those pass catchers for the Houston Texans. And just looking at it, guys, again, probably not expecting Diggs to play that much. Tank Dell, is he going to play that much? Probably not. Nico Collins, who they recently signed to an extension, probably not expecting him to play all that much. And then from there, it becomes a big guessing game. You got Ben Skoranek, who they brought in from the LA Rams. They traded for him at, I believe, a 7th round pick. He's going to be a special teams guy, but he is someone that has been standing out in camp for them, as has John Mechie. Mechie is someone that they did like last preseason as well. He was just someone that really couldn't get anything going for them throughout the season as well when they were pretty banged up. And so the Texans are a team, just, again, I've been doing this for 7 years. They are always one of the tougher teams to get information out of, whether that's by design from the front office kind of telling them that, or the beat reporters for Houston just not being all that good, or just naturally the production has just been spread out. It hasn't been concentrated. There are a few teams, just real quick, that they are just the go-to, and we'll get into that throughout the NFL preseason. If you guys want that coverage, it's part of the reason why it's been so successful. Make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. We'll get into that as this preseason progresses, but I did want to bring that up. Houston is not one of those teams, though. They're typically a team that spreads it out. So I'd never want to go too crazy on their positional players, but Mechie is someone that has been having a good camp. They've been very vocal about that. So he's a player that does make logical sense to have playing time as well. So I'm happy to get to him. There's trade rumors around Robert Woods. Xavier Hutchinson was someone that they were hyping up a bunch during camp last year, actually. It was really the 3 people that they liked a lot in camp were Johnny Johnson, Hutchinson, and John Mechie. But clearly they didn't like him too much for the fact that they brought in Ben Skoranek and Stephon Diggs. And so some players need to separate themselves. And then you got Jadon Janke, I believe a South Dakota Jackrabbit. So he had like a 900-yard season. It didn't look good doing it last year in college. We probably don't need to touch him, especially when we got all these veteran receivers that have been decent players in the NFL. Steven Sims, for the Washington Commanders, had some decent plays in there. Quintez Cephas, someone that I think it was 3 years ago was looking like he was going to be the Lions like receiver number 1, And then after one game, got injured and then got into some trouble. I believe gambling. He's a good playmaker, though. Like, if we get a decent amount of him in the second half or first half, that's intriguing. And so I will be checking Twitter to see which one of these receivers can we potentially get a half of football out of, because I think that makes sense. And again, the pass catchers for the Texans are going to be better suited because of their quarterbacks just being a little bit better. So let's go ahead and get down into the lineup process for the Hall of Fame game. Now, in terms of picking a DST, like which one I want to be on the most, it doesn't really matter, guys. I'm playing a bunch of GPPs. Single entry wise, if I had to choose, I probably would just go with the Texans. And again, that's going to be rooted in the fact that this is supposed to be a low scoring game. Look at the money line. It's on the Texans to win as well. Does that really matter? No. But we know the Bears are going to be sending their starters. The Texans might not do it. It might only be a drive, but that could be the biggest difference maker. Maybe we get a lucky pick six or something like that. I do still think we want to be playing the Chicago Bears defense. I like the Chicago Bears defense as a whole. But again, if you have their backups going against some stars for a little bit, that does change the equation slightly. Going to be playing both kickers. Again, you don't maybe need to do that. I would suggest 3 out of 4, though, at least. We have just seen that historically speaking from the Hall of Fame game. Coaches are not willing to open up their playbook too much. Very basic game plan. Don't want to get players injured. Just trying to get a little bit of looks at a bunch of backups. So typically speaking, this is kind of the route that you should be going. And then from there, for the Chicago Bears, probably looking at one of their running backs. Again, I think Roschon Johnson is the player that makes the most sense. This is kind of what I'm looking at. I don't mind Austin Reed as like a dart throw quarterback wise. If we get news that he's going to play more than a quarter and a half, I don't mind that he is a rushing quarterback or can be a rushing quarterback. Don't mind that. But for the most part, this is kind of the lineup process that I'm looking at. Velus Jones Jr. I mentioned as well. But that's going to do it for this video, guys. I hope you enjoyed the coverage. I love covering this stuff. I think preseason DFS is the biggest edge. I've been doing this for 7 years. Basically, the reason why NFL DFS is so big, you can thank me, guys. Somewhat joking, but a little bit serious. The OG in the space doing it. I have a lot of fun covering it. It's a very big edge. It's the biggest profit point that I have each year. All right. That's going to be all, guys. Thanks for watching. Make sure to give a like and subscribe. Appreciate it. And as always, let's keep cashing.